I'm gonna maybe just break down the actual setup and how the equipment is routed and used before I go any further. I'm using Ableton as my master DAW. The screen you see here, for those not familiar, is Machine, or Maschine, as the Germans like to call it. So Machine is basically, for me, it's the closest thing to an MPC. It's this unit here. I've got multiple banks of sounds here. It's mostly one-shot sounds, so samples that are short, and by putting those together in context of a groove or a beat, you create music. So I have kicks and snares. A lot of these sounds are actually from when I use the MPC 3000, so that was kind of fun to bring those sounds into the digital world. But, various basic drum sounds, percussion, some breaks, I think, somewhere. So it's a variety of drum kind of textures and sounds that I can use to create with. As well as that, what I have in here, which I think is what sets the Machine apart from anything else I've used, is I have a bank where I have all soft synths. So I have basses, I have some kind of pad keys, I have some leads. Now the beauty of this is those who use Ableton will be familiar with when you want to track different sounds, you got to change channel, right? So you go into a different channel or a track. Same on Logic or pretty much anything else. But I have basically Machine running on one channel in Ableton. I'll go into, there's actually more there, which I'll explain in a second. But I basically have Machine running inside Ableton where I can just select any pad. So say I select this one, then that pad is here. So whatever I'm touching here is mapped automatically. Same goes for drum sounds. So it's a really quick interface between the keyboard, the pads, and selecting what I want to use and sequencing it. So basically, Machine works on a loop basis. So I'm working primarily in 4-bar loops. If I wanted to do something with a 7-bar loop or an odd time signature, that's an easy setting to change. And it's just looping round and round these 4 bars. And whatever I play is being recorded. There's a lot of commitment to that. Like I can undo something or I can delete something, but it's kind of interesting to me, the idea of committing to what you're playing in real time. Instrumentalists do that all the time, right? You're like, I want to play this chord, I want to play this fill, that's what you're going to play. So in this context, it's the same for me. If I mess up or if something comes out different to what I want, what I'm imagining, then part of the challenge for me is like, how can I use that and manipulate that to become something else? So it's very unusual that I'll actually undo or delete something. It's a very linear forward motion kind of process. So then I have all that sound coming out through Ableton. These 2 channels with clips, I'll talk about those in a minute. But basically, I have broken out, you probably can't quite read it up there, but I've broken out the Machine into kicks. You can see them on that channel. All the snares, all the breaks, all the basses, some of the keys, and the lead synths. So I've just assigned those to different channels on Ableton. Reason being is I want to have as much control as I can of those sounds sonically and in the mix live without having to go into a mixer on the computer or even into the mixer on Machine. So over here I've got a Novation Launch Control XL. It's basically set up like a mixer now. So say on my snares channel, which is here, I have 2 filters on there. So I've got like a high pass filter, I've got a low pass filter, and then I have an effects bus which I've mapped to both A and B. One's a reverb, one's a delay. So it's pretty simple. And basically, I have that same setup for kick drums, the snares, the basses, the synths, and the synth leads. But I can manipulate those individually and have mixed control over everything and basically be able to interface with this without dealing with the computer. And that's really important to me, where I only go to the computer in an emergency, basically. And it's great to have it there, but I have a thing about seeing people performing on the laptop, and it's like, are you emailing or tweeting or making music, or what are you doing? So for me, this is all about breaking out of the box. So that's those two. This little Akai MIDI keyboard here, I've just mapped a few MIDI controls. So if I go back to that, cool. If I go back to this beat, I've got master filters. I've got resonance on both of those. So I've got quite a lot of sonic control there. I've got an LFO on them. And then I've got another filter for resampling. But basically, I have a resample section here, so I can sample the MPC into Ableton, the machine into Ableton, and free it up. So now it's free to reprogram. On the iPad, I'm running a software called Touchable, iOS, and Touchable is basically an Ableton controller. Any plugin can be mapped on here. You can create your own kind of Chaos Pad style XY, you can have a setup where you can drag your finger, and wherever it goes affects 2 or 3 parameters at once. So it's very tactile. And again, just to get off the computer. I have 2 Chaos Pads here. Love the Chaos Pads. I don't know if any of you used a Chaos Pad out there? Cool. Super fun. A big thing for me with digital technology is creating tactile interfaces. For me, it's important you have an idea and you create it through your hands rather than through the mouse or directly with the computer. So the Chaos Pad is primarily an effects unit. So I'm running this Nord piano sound through there right now. So this is a reverb, a delay, kind of a granulator. And there are all these different effects where just by moving my finger around, I'm affecting 2 different parameters. So it's kind of like having two knobs on a plugin, and instead of moving them separately, by moving your finger, you're moving them both at the same time. So it's really fun. And then I end up being able to sample anything into here I want to. So I played that earlier, sampled it into this Chaos Pad, and then I can filter it really easily. Most of all for me, it's about immediacy. I have a second Chaos Pad here, I used to have 3 of them actually, but now it's downscaled to 2. But the second one is also to resample the machine. So if we have this beat we just had running, I can sample this into this Chaos Pad. I'm just going to sample 2 quarter notes of it. So what you hear now is in here. And in effect, it means what I can do is I can start programming something afresh on the machine. It gives me, in effect, like a DJ kind of interface with it. For me, a lot of this process came out of DJing as well. Like I love that whole vibe of when a DJ takes you on a journey. And part of that journey is created from the kind of repetition of tempo and the whole nature of loops, right? And the fact that you're not stopping. And that's become actually a thing for me when I play with the live band. I don't like stopping. Like maybe once in a set we might stop, but it just kills the vibe for me. And when I see a band, and especially if they don't even know which tune they're going to play next, so they finish the tune, that's like, yo, so yeah, should we play that? Or yeah, no, I don't want to play that. That kind of shit, I'm not, nah. So for me in this context, I love bringing in that element. And even when I play with the band, like I mentioned, I love keeping that continuity. So by having this setup, I can never stop, basically. So typically with the solo rig, if I do a show, the solo rig is usually dance floor kind of vibe. It might be a 2-hour set. I think the longest I've done is like 5 or 6 hours, which is kind of insane to be creating music nonstop for that long. But it happened one time for some reason. But it's just, I get lost in it. And I think that's a big part of creativity, where if you can get lost in the process and have fun with it, then that's what's really important, whatever your instrument may be. What else do we have here? The Nord I'm just using for piano and Rhodes sounds. It's going through a carbon copy delay pedal, like a pretty regular delay pedal. And then I've actually split that into several components where I've got different things going through this Mackie over here. So Casey and Nadia, Casey will join me in a bit here, and Nadia is going to join me later on. I can sample them at any point in time. So if I'm performing with the band, I would have the horn players, the vocalist, the drummer, the grand piano, everything going through the Mackie. So I can select anything at any point in time and grab it via the Chaos pad. So that's basically happening through splitter boxes, which are actually they're right here. Somewhere there's one here, where the boxes it's one input and 2 outputs. It just splits the sound in half. And then the Nord in this particular example, I've also got it going into Ableton as well. So for example, the Chaos pad, it's pretty limited. It can sample a beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, 8 beats, or 16 beats. That's it. I love that limitation. I think that it's like painting, or coloring. Like if I gave you 1 million colored pencils and I was like, yo, draw me something. The first half an hour, you're probably like, man, what color am I going to use? But if I gave you 2 pencils, you jump straight in, right? So it's that kind of thing where I love that limitation. Chaos pads are very limited. It's like a 4-track recorder. So that's great. But if I'm doing something in, say, 7/4, or if it's a 13-bar loop and I want to sample the piano or the keyboard, then I put it into Ableton, which has that flexibility. The USB controller is basically, as I showed before, directly connected to a machine. So it's just whatever sound is on machine is going to be on the keyboard. Which is a really great immediacy for me as well. I think that's most of the pieces of gear here. Just minor details, sound card-wise, there's a Focusrite Scarlett. It's a decent interface. I think everyone makes pretty decent interfaces now, so which is great. The entry price has gone down so much that people can afford whatever sounds good, which is dope. I'm running a in-ear monitor, which is this unit here. A lot of people are like, man, but how do you know when to come in on the loop? And the fact is that I have click running here. So if I'm working with a drummer, I split the click between he and I. And it means that I can create that absolutely seamless marriage of beats and live. So we could be jamming out on some hardcore jazz vibe, and then I can start programming with him, and we never lose the tempo at all. So then what I like to do a lot with a solo set is basically live remixing. So when I would remix, like before the setup, my process, which I imagine is pretty similar to most people, is I get the set to vocal, I put it on, at the time for me was Logic, get it on the grid, I just start making music to it, like get some basic beats going, find some harmony that works with the melody, and just kind of create my vision of the track. So what that's evolved to for me is remixing on the fly. So as I mentioned earlier with the Stevie Wonder thing, it's like, well, how's it going to work today? And then Ableton is super powerful with that, where Stevie Wonder, since we're talking about it, Superstition happens to be in the key of E flat minor. So I might be jamming out and creating, and I might be in the key of C minor. And I might think, man, Superstition would sound dope over this, and it would be pitched down a little bit. His voices sound all like weird, and Ableton is great for that. Just immediately grabbing something, changing the key, flying it in, and it's always in sync. With this setup, I used to have the acapellas on Serato. Anyone here use Serato? Cool. So Serato is a DJ software where basically, for those who don't know, the files on your computer are on the vinyl. So whatever you do with the vinyl, the file follows suit. So I'd have these acapellas on a turntable, and it was a purist in me. I was like, it's a remix, the acapella's got to be on a turntable. So I'd have Serato, and then I'd get all excited, and I'd jump up and down, and the needle would jump, or something would happen. So it wasn't that flexible. And that prompted my change to Ableton, which gave me a really rock-solid way to do this. So if I basically, the session I loaded up today, all these clips you see in the middle are all different acapellas and source material that I like to mess with. Actually, while we're here, on the far left, these blue ones, these are clicks. So there's a 4/4 click, a 3/4 click, a 5/4 click, a 7/4 click. If I was doing something in 11 and I needed the click, I would just program a new click. I don't like using the internal one, so I just create my own drum rack click here. So those are inaudible to anyone but me, but basically I'm just using 2 pitches of a clave, a lower pitch for the beat 1 and a higher pitch for the rest of the beats, so it's always clear where the geography of the bar is. So if I just kind of pick one of these and let's just make some more music, and you can see how the acapellas kind of slide in. So I'm going to use one which, I mean, these are all pretty familiar, very familiar to me, but it's always a challenge to me, like, let me do something different with this. It's got to be, I get bored otherwise. I almost can't understand how, like, if you ever have a huge hit, like a #1 hit, you have to perform that hit for the rest of your life. And you've got to perform it like the record. I had a friend in New Zealand who had a huge #1, and he went out on tour and he was kind of bored, so he started making everything kind of like Brazilian Latin flavor. And all his fans were complaining to the label and the management and the promoters. It's like, we want to hear the record, right? So I'm the antithesis of that. I'm like the anti-show guy. And for me, when I see anyone perform, whether it's electronic or live, all I want to see and hear is something I've never heard before. So that's kind of the motivation behind this for me. So I'm going to just jam out and find an acapella which fits with whatever happens, and you can just see how that works. Thank you. So that's the other fun thing I love with this is like at the end of that is it becomes all the source material which I can just go somewhere completely different. And for me, that's kind of like the idea of the needle drop. And I don't know who here has made a record by made a beat by sampling something, right? You sample some shit you really like and you build some drums around that and get a vibe. And so the needle drop is the idea of actually, you know who's the master of this is Q-Tip, like that cat. It's almost like he could pick any record ever made, drop the needle on it, and find a hit. It's weird, and I don't have that skill. Like, for me, if I'm doing that, I'll be listening through some music, and I'll hear something, and I'll run to the stereo or whatever and grab that thing. But the idea of that is here, in that I want to create the needle drop. I want to create a sample which inspires whatever happens next. So in practice, it becomes, again, that idea of a really linear kind of experience where whatever moment comes next, like the sample that was just playing, that could go anywhere. I mean, it could go to so many directions. Like, if I sped that back up again, if I slow that back down again, so now we're somewhere completely foreign to where we began, right? And for me, that's the beauty of this process, where it's like we could end up finding out about something which you would never have expected. And I love that. That's, to me, the surprise. And part of why I do this is I'm pretty self-centered with this. I'm doing this for myself, not for you, which is contrary to a lot of how people think entertainment should work. But it's like, be a voyeur, like come into my world and experience my imagination. And for me, imagination is largely about where you can surprise yourself. Otherwise we go into routine. I mean, I think as human beings, that's quite natural. You become good at something and you repeat the routine. And it's like, I know I can do this. I know that when I do a layup, I go this way and I can get it. If I go that way, I might miss. And for me, I'm kind of like, well, let me go that way and see if I'm going to miss. And if I miss, cool. So being open to vulnerability is a huge part of this process too, which I think for a lot of people is ironic in the context of technology. Technology is often used as a way to make sure of things. It's like if the computer's running it and the technology is straight, nothing can go wrong, it's cool. And you don't have to be vulnerable. But to me, in any kind of creativity, if there's no sense of vulnerability, then you're kind of losing the essence of creativity. And that may not be a universal opinion, but it's definitely, my kind of mindset.